So our next segment is brought to you by Engineered Tax Services, where engineering and accounting come together. Joining us is a friend of Bold via Skype is Karyn Turk. She's the host of Red America Radio.
Karyn, they're from restaurant empires to tech giants. We were discussing if tech companies like Google and Facebook are becoming too big. Welcome, Karyn.
Hi, welcome. TGIF, everyone.
TGIF. What a cool background.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're in Palm Beach. That's Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's paradise. That's why I live here.
So anyway, Donald Trump was saying on CNBC on Monday that the U.S. could benefit from the money that European regulators are getting from lawsuits with major American technology companies. You know, they've been fining the hell out of these people for decades.
Yeah.
You look at Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and because of the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDP, the EU has been allowed to fine Google a combined $9.5 billion. So, Karyn, do you think the U.S. should create a system like this?
I do. I think we've allowed these big tech companies to just really grow out of control, and there's so little regulation. The EU is truly onto something here, and they're definitely ahead of us with this general data protection that they're doing. This is something in the U.S. that we really need to implement. They are actually empowering their citizens to be able to take control of data that's available online. And that's something that we're really not doing in the US. And that's just the tip of the iceberg here. When you talk about this $9.5 billion in fines, you're talking about something that, maybe we should be doing. And I know that the president has discussed that, we are very different, but perhaps the attorney general is going to approach this.
So, but some people say this could be harmful, right, Karyn? I mean, these are companies, here we are on our smartphones. We've come to depend on these technologies. You're actually using a Microsoft service, Skype. This is being broadcast through Facebook and Twitter, and we're here on Google Docs.
Yeah.
So how do we, maximize the value for an American citizen and, people around the world while also protecting their ability to innovate and make our lives easier?
There's so many topics around this subject because, I love Facebook. I don't like that I feel that Facebook censors conservative voices, and I don't like that there's censorship of free speech. So on the one hand, I want little regulation because I want to make sure that, nobody's censored. But at the same time, we're already experiencing censorship. We're experiencing the fact that advertisers of these entities have a hand in the content that all of us are consuming. And this trickles down. You look at Jeff Bezos, for example. If you don't think that there are some biased opinions in big tech, you're very, very wrong. So we do need some regulations to make sure that the data that we're consuming and the things that we're being fed are being done to us in a fair manner.
Karyn, so CNN Business is saying that some members of Congress fear that these tech companies could grow so large they could overtake the government influence. Do you think that could be possible?
I do. I think in some ways they really have a lot of influence on us now. In some ways, more influence than the government even has. You just both held up your smartphones. I told you I love Facebook. All of us are on social media and on the internet every day consuming news, consuming content, and we have to get a handle on this because these companies are already a little out of control and we're already dealing with something that's borderline monopoly.
So where do you think the balance could be found, Karyn, right? Because we like these services. We like the jobs they create. It keeps America competitive. We're the most innovative country in the world. There's no doubt about that. But how do we balance the public interest with the ability for these companies to innovate and create prosperity?
Coming up with fair regulations, and that remains to be seen. I don't think that litigation is necessarily the answer. I admire what the EU is doing, and I think by putting some of these data protections in place for their citizens, they've done a good job, but I don't necessarily agree with fines and, taking those fines and applying them, and that's going to solve the problem. That is just a result of a problem that already exists. So we have to look at a way to create some regulations that are fair for all of us, where free speech isn't being censored. We're allowing these companies to do their job, but they're not growing so out of control that they're monopolizing the industry and feeding us content that is what they want us to see.
So almost what you're asking for, Karyn, is for them to be treated like any other company.
Yes, that would be great. Instead of, these tech giants that are just kind of running around right now, with very little regulation. I mean, it really is something that we haven't experienced before. We had, media regulations, and, this has been going on for a long time. Look at the way that television has been regulated and other things. We have gotten totally away from this when it comes to the internet, and we haven't figured out a solution on how to handle it. It's time for a change.
Well, it's all new. And of course, Karyn, you know this very much as a conservative, the government is usually a little bit more reactive than proactive, isn't it? And the internet's kind of new.
For sure. I mean, and I want limited government regulations. I'm not looking to, have any kind of big government, solution, because I'm against big government. But I also look at this and I look at all of these problems that we have, and the problems just keep piling up, and we have to come up with a solution. And I think the president's really onto something. I admire the president, and I admire a lot of things he does when it comes to the economy, and this is one of them.
Well, Karyn, always a firecracker, Karyn.
Yes,
we
and
love
great
your
chatting with
opinion,
you.
and we're
Thank
jealous
you. I
of
love
paradise.
being
We
here.
are. All right, thanks again, Karyn.